Gonna get any interviews?
Huh?
Gonna get any interviews?
No, they're silent.
So they're Skowhegan Indians. I was born and raised one,
And you can hold that if you want, but it probably
our
won't be
name.
a shot.
Is that right?
Hey buddy, how are you?
It would just be really hurtful. Like, we're also Skowhegan Indians, so they count. So I kind of think they won't count after whether we can or not. Yeah, I
Let's wait till 6. I have you.
My name is Noella Craig. I'm chairperson of educational policy, and that's what this committee is. It's a subcommittee of the school board. The school board is a group of 23, and this is a subcommittee of the school board. So I wanted to take a minute. Just to explain the format that we have for our committees. Committees are members-only discussions and invited guests, and we will have other opportunities for additional school board members and the public to speak at some other time. So I'd like to begin by maybe going around the tables and everyone having a chance to introduce themselves. And so we start to my left with John.
I'm Brett Colbert, I'm the superintendent of schools here today.
I'm Andy McCall, I'm the assistant superintendent. Nice to meet you.
Ken Oakley, 20-year-old board chairperson.
I'm Jean Conley, and I'm from Skowhegan. My name is Mariella Charles, and I represent
Jane Arthur, and I'm from Skowhegan.
I'm Peggy Lovejoy, and I'm from Skowhegan. Karen Curran, and I'm from Skowhegan also.
Heidi Shackman from North.
Liz Anderson, chair from Skowhegan.
Tim Downey, vice chair from Smithfield.
And if you'd like to please introduce yourselves. We'd like to know the other one.
We can't hear. Can't hear.
We have the representative.
How about now? Hi, I'm Simon Nevin, Gristic Band of Micmacs, a cultural director.
My name is Matt Dana from Passamaquoddy Indian Township.
I'm Roger Paul, Passamaquoddy from Madakmiguk, Maliseet from Negutguk.
Sigourney Dana. I grew up in Solon, but I am Passamaquoddy. I mean, no, I'm not. Just kidding. I'm Wabanaki, which is sort of, yeah. I'm Penobscot.
I'm Barry Dana, I'm Sigourney's father, and I am from Penobscot. My name is Richard Philboy. I'm a Micmac from Littleton, Maine, elder member of the University Band of Micmac.
I'm John Bear Mitchell, Penobscot, I live in Old Town.
Naliwas Judgment Neptune, a jubilee has the best of Mukat Nakabanakmi Now, Naganudagaki Gammon Joe Happy Museum. My name is George Neptune, and I'm a member of the Passamaquoddy tribe at Indian Township. I am also a museum educator at the Abbey Museum, but I am not representing the museum today.
I'm Molly Smith. I'm from Penobscot Nation, Indian Island.
Madara Neil Bliwi Sibai Neil Mojayo Neil Bliwiji Gajigdan Hadijik Sibai. My name is Madonna Saptoma. I'm from the Passamaquoddy tribe, that's Mukat, and I'm from the Elder Circle, Sibai.
Thank you very much. I want to welcome you all here this evening. We are inviting you to have a discussion about the use of Indian in our school as Skowhegan Indians. And so I'd like to start by offering the floor to Mary Dana to start us off with this presentation.
First of all, I appreciate this opportunity. I had a meeting with the superintendent, Brett Colbury, and I thought it was very positive. It was really great to finally meet face-to-face and have a one-on-one. And he assured me that the school board was very open to discussion, and it just really set a tone of dialogue. And I think that's very key. As everybody knows, this is an issue with nicknames and mascots and imagery that really goes from the west to the east coast, north and south. So tribes all over America are facing this and dealing with it in ways that the hopeful outcomes is that sports teams, educational institutions see our point of view that really in these times that these using Native people as mascots and nicknames really has met its time. It's time to move on from there. Native people have been very quiet. We've been in a situation throughout the history of this country where we were not in power and we did not have a voice. I think probably the civil rights movement in the 60s opened our eyes up to the fact that maybe we can speak up, but it took a long time. So I really want to thank the school board for making this opportunity available to us. Our position tonight, as you see this, the representatives from the tribes here, is not to enter into debate. It's not to be confrontational. We are here to share with you our thoughts on this issue. It's something we've grown up with ever since we were old enough to understand things that occur in the media. I personally attended Old Town High School, which then was the Indians, and I participated in band. I was in the academic course. I participated in sports, and if I ever did anything worthy of being written up in the paper, I was called an Old Town Indian. And I always wanted that to be an obstacle. I did not run representing Old Town. When I ran on the field or when I ran track, I represented my people. They were what motivated me. And when I would line up in football fields, often a small corner of the whole field, thousands of people there, but the small corner were my tribe. They would sneak through the woods and not pay the gate, so they always stood in the corner. But that's why I was that calling to be recognized by your own people. And we grow up at that culture where we honor one another for who we are. Not that we have to be great at anything, but just that we are as individuals. And this is how we raise our children. So this particular issue with sports teams, institutions here in the state, using the nickname of Indians, whether it be through mascots, the name itself, or imagery, I sort of put it on the back burner just to get to high school. It was a survival training. And then after high school, you move on and you get busy in life, and this particular issue didn't really become that big of a deal for me. You know, I was just participating in life. And then when my daughter Mullion and I sat and watched the Skowhegan Indians versus the Nokomis Warriors in a basketball game, Class A girls final, we were so excited to watch it on TV because you could see it on public TV. We're just watching basketball game until halftime. That's when the imagery came out, the mascot came out, and I got to see firsthand what it did to my daughter. Now, I understand that there's no more imagery, I understand there's no more mascot, and I applaud this institution for that. I think that falls right in line with the rest of the state that have all dropped it. There may still be the name Warriors, but they dropped all the imagery. Now, they may still have some statues in the front yard, and we're not asking them to change that. But they did drop the imagery, and there's really no more association with tribes of Maine when they go out on the court. So I applaud Skowhegan for that as well. But it really did set the tone for having this obligation as a parent and as a tribal leader to make sure that my children and all Native children and all children grow up in a society that does not continue to condone any form of racism whatsoever. And I think it's very important to make a point here is that this panel of Native people do not look at Skowhegan as being racist. However, the issue itself becomes racist if it's continued once you know the difference. If you never knew the difference, that the tribes viewed this as being not in favor with our culture, not in keeping with what we feel is how to be honored. It's not in keeping with how we honor others. Once you learn that difference from this panel, who will speak on this tonight, I think you'll gain an appreciation on our perspective. What you do with it is certainly your choice. We cannot come in here with a law book and say you must do this or anything else. We're simply asking, as good neighbors, we live in the same state, we live in the same town, so that you recognize our desire to be able to sit down and watch a basketball game or a track meet or a football game and not have to engage in conversation with our children. Why do they call themselves Indians? They're not Indians. This is a conversation that we have a lot. And I don't blame anybody for not knowing that. But now the time has come. We've formulated our group. This panel of people represents all the tribes of Maine, but not all natives of Maine. Because Maine, like anywhere else, we have native people from all over. However, this particular panel represents the four recognized governments, tribal governments here in the state. So I don't need to exclude anybody, but this is the core group of when you look at native people in Maine. So I've had a lot of opportunities to speak on the issue, but I think it's very important to hear a broader, and from each of the different tribes, you see the different age groups represented. You see the female, so there are moms here, grandmas, granddads, and so I think you'll get a very good perspective on our full. And we'll probably miss things tonight, but you know, I think this process will go on, and we'll have further conversations. So that's really what I'm hoping for. So maybe if we could start here and we'll go right to the end. Maybe reintroduce yourself and then speak on the issue to the extent that you want.
Test. Words. Hello there. My name is Lima. Is Roxy. That's I guess a church name. I guess that was given to our people that. Once they would get baptized, they would take on a Catholic name. I never really recognized that name translates up to son, and as it is, it's a Wabanaki or something. Like my Indian name is White Wolf. I'd like the White Wolf, travel and tax. I'm comfortable like that. But also, we also take care of we're providers and hunters, warriors when it comes down to the time of it. My understanding, what I was told by my elder, that once you pick up that drumstick, when you start pounding the drum like the ones before you, you take on that role, you automatically become a part of a society of warriors that are to protect your people. Stand up at all costs whenever you got to do it. Thus, here I am today. May historically we're not in the woods anymore, like in our traditional homelands of where we're at. But rather now we're here as people and asking, for the respect. And the respect to be given, because we give it out. We give it out. We don't as people. We have teachings and guidelines that we go through, and so with those teachings, this is how we conduct ourselves. And one of those teachings is respect, and also truth. So some of the things you might hear today with that panel is you might hear some truthful things, but don't be offended. These are only just oral history, oral teachings. And according to our ways, this would be, when we talk about oral traditions and oral teachings, this would happen. Because I may not remember something, just like Barry just said. He may not remember something, but he's telling a story, and that's when one of us would intervene and say, hold on, you forgot this part. And then we'd be like, oh yes, that's right. But that's the way we are. We've always been an oral people, and we talk about it, so we don't forget. A lot of the stuff that you may learn in your school books is only a tip, a very watered down version of the real history of what happened. And sometimes, you can get upset and life goes on. We got other things that we have to worry about, I guess. This is like being here today. This is like one of the things that we have to address. It's not that we're not upset about it. All we're asking is for the respect. Respect to our people, respect to our traditions, respect to who we are, and we ask to acknowledge that we have a history together. I mean, we could go in and give you guys I could go into grim detail on the travesties of our people, but I'm not here to do that. All I'm here is to share how I feel, and I'm speaking on behalf of the tribe and how we all feel. It's hard because you don't see other schools that people rally behind. And if this was a case like, say if we used the Jewish people and we used Jews, how many Jews would be up and up, or the Latino community, if it was Skowhegan Latinos? How, there's no difference, or the Skowhegan Uncle Toms, or no different than us in our school, in my community of Sabaga-Negative, in my original community, if we use Sabaga-Negative Caucasians. You guys thought society would just be up in an uproar. Why are you guys doing that? How are we being patient? And that's another teaching of our people, to sit back and be patient about time will fix itself. And over time it will come full circle. And that's important also with our traditions. The circle concepts, that thing that goes around, it's gonna once you start your journey, you have to complete it. So we're here today, like we said, we're not here to debate. We're not here, what we're asking is like in a respectful, humble way, from our people to your people, as nation to nation, in accordance to how we were from one governments to other governments, and historically with our treaties, with the negotiations in the long term. Like the past is the past, but we don't forget. And in order, one of the teachings I have learned over the years from elders is, in order to know where you're going, you have to know where you come from. And today, it's a little reminder. It's a reminder, a reality check of who we are as people. And so, like I said, the respect part is there. Oh, that's a no.
My name is Matt Dana. I represent the Passamaquoddy tribe in the Maine legislature. I'm a man of few words, but I just wanted to share a quick story. Last year, my youngest son was 8 years old, and we actually wrestled in the Skowhegan High School gym. And he had a great time, but he seen the huge paint on the wall. And he asked me, why? Why, Dad? Why are they using Native people? There's no Native people there's not a large group of Native people that live around here. What does that represent? So I had to explain to him that we as a people still need to convince and ask for that respect that it's offensive to us. Now that was a hard teaching for him. He still had a hard time. He couldn't understand why Native people are used as imagery. So.
As mentioned before, I'm Roger Paul. I'm a teacher of the language, the culture. I teach at our community schools, and I also teach at the university level. And I want to mirror what Barry said. I grew up with these images and often ridicule, but we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about actually what we feel. And thank you for giving us a voice. For many years, we didn't have a voice. And to offer us a voice, it feels wonderful to be able to actually ask us what we think. And for years, there's been a lot of imagery, and people are realizing the psychological effect it has on not only our people, but the young people of all the other cultures, that it elicits dehumanization of a culture of people. And matter of fact, the APA, the American Psychological Association, has written documentation to prove that it does dehumanize people, and it actually elicits unfair thoughts or disrespectful thoughts in our youth. It teaches them that the culture of Native people are a thing of the past. My job is to teach that we're not gone. We're still here. We still speak our language. We still follow our traditions. We're a humble people. And it's not really our place to come and demand what others should do for us. But we do come to ask, or to tell, how it makes us feel. Now, I'm told that this name is to respect Passamaquoddies. I read in the history of the town that it was to respect the Passamaquoddy people that were here. Well, I'm Passamaquoddy, and I really don't feel respected, I have to admit. That not so much the name or the fact that you're respecting it, and I'm not calling anyone a racist. Certainly, we're getting beyond that now. Education of the general level of people is getting better and better over the years, and slowly we're learning that what we do really actually does harm to others. And every day we're finding out more and more about, wow, I didn't realize that was actually promoting something that wasn't good. So we are learning, and I see that here on the wall when we talk about respect yourself, respect others, respect your school, that is also one of our teachings. We respect others, and we respect your decision to do what you choose. And we also honor you in asking us how we feel. And I came to let you know that I myself do not feel honored. We're a humble people, and growing up when I saw all of the hooting and the actual, I have to say that the education of our children is completely wrong from what we are. Whatever was written in the history books about us, I'm not sure who wrote that, but it certainly wasn't from our perspective. And it's actually benefited me because my job now is to untangle that history and actually share wherever I can. And we can offer that. We have all of the people that are still here to offer any education that you need about our people and about our ways. Even the name, Skowhegan. And I read somewhere where it meant looking place. And the Passamaquoddy, Scoopdom is actually a brook trout. And Zinahegan is a fish weir. So Skowhegan actually is what we would name a brook trout fish weir. And I believe your statue holds one. And but for years we weren't heard, we weren't given a voice. Unless it was written in the books, it wasn't taken for truth. We've still, right along, we've had an oral history. We still have that same oral history. And it's my job to make sure all of our people still know that. And thank you for giving us the opportunity to come and express our feelings. Oliwin.
Hello. Just again, I'm Sigourney Dana, and I grew up right up the river from here in Solon, and then I went to Solon Elementary, then I went to Carabec High School. I've played girls basketball teams many times in summer tournaments. I played in the gymnasium at the high school many times. I've run on the track field multiple times in the springtime because Carabec, we've got a really bad dirt track that's not good in the spring, so we come down here. This area really means something to me, and I'm going to Farmington for secondary education in earth and space science. So education is a huge thing to me, and it's very clear that that's what's needed here. And I too saw the 3 R's because every school needs a good motto to get their kids up and pumping. And the respect part is great. And I think the respectful thing to do is to show your students that you don't stand for this kind of thing. Oh, someone says that's offensive. Okay, cool, we'll change it. That's awesome. And you teach your kids how to get along with people. I don't know. I think that's what everyone wants to teach their kids. So growing up, my dad taught me a lot of native skills because that's what he did. That's his business, survival skills. I've helped him build wigwams. And when I was a baby, I sort of did the opposite of helping to build birch bark canoes. They try to soak the roots because roots need soaking, and I just waddle right up, take them out. That was my form of helping. And this area, it just means so much to me because not only on my dad's side, you know, I've got that native part, but up in Bingham, got quite a few generations on my mom's side that's lived up there, log drivers, all that. So it's just growing up in small town Maine is really hard for a Native person, really hard. I learned from a very early age that people don't really want to hear my side of the story. If I disagree with a textbook, I did not feel comfortable to raise my hand and say, hey, I think that's wrong. That's not the view I share. So I learned very quickly to just shut up because no one cares. But now I'm going to be an educator. Now I feel like I have a voice. I'm at a very welcoming school at Farmington. I love it there. And I'm in the education program. I'm constantly working with educators, and those social studies concentrations, I work with them because they've had the same small town Maine education I've had that I taught, you know, not our perspective. And I worked with them and said, hey, use me as a resource. I know a lot of things. I've taught them some things, I've critiqued them and whatnot, and they receive it so well. And to see that in my generation, being that accepting, because sometimes I worry about my generation, as I know most people do, but to see that, and they're going to be educators, educating your kids and future generations, to see people who respect everyone so much, just makes me so very happy. So it all comes down to respect. Believe in it. Fuck it.
I want to say thank you for having us here today. And my name is Richard Silverboy. I'm an elder for the Micmacs, for the Ruthie Band Micmacs, Prescott. I live south of Prescott. I was born in Glenboro, Maine, right on Route 1. Never lived on a reservation. And I grew up off reservation, going to off reservation school. And in the process of doing that, I am a generation ahead of most of these people. And there was a lot of prejudice, a lot of racism when I was young. And the history that they were teaching wasn't the real history. You know, it was something that was written by somebody that just wanted to get a book out. And the other thing is, most of the people in my area, they watched a lot of TV, and back then there was a lot of Westerns, and there was a lot of Hollywood influence. And I tell you, as much racism as there was, and prejudice, there was times in my life when I didn't want to be an Indian. And whenever I watched TV and I watched a Western, I would root for the Cowboys. And I was sick of that. On that one. I fought my way through school because I was the youngest of a large family, and in the process had to fight my way through the household too. But never was one to allow anybody to knock me down without getting back up. And I did that most of my life. And although I never really had the opportunity to stand out and say this is right or this is wrong, and these people are wrong for doing this or saying that. Many times I was called dirty Indian, drunken Indian, everything that was negative about Indian. Had a gentleman tell me one time, thanks a lot, taking care of our land till we got here. And he's still living today. But it's comments like that's why I'm here tonight. And I really appreciate the fact that you guys are just discussing this and the possibility of making change. Because I've made changes in my life. And I taught all my children never to be hateful and never to allow anybody to disrespect you without speaking out. And thanks a lot.
I got this one. No, you breathed in it. Okay. So, just a quick re-reference. I'm John Bear Mitchell. I teach at the University of Maine. I'm an administrator there as well. I've been there for about 14 years. Before that, I had Barry's old job teaching at this Indian Island School, which now Roger has. And taught there for a number of years teaching Native Studies and 8th grade social studies. before going on to obtain some other degrees and ended up at the University of Maine. But I had a lot of good experiences in Scout Heating. I've, for 5 years in a row, been invited down to the middle school, the old middle school, by an art teacher and the principal at the time at the middle school, and did Maine Touring Arts and Education projects, again, 5 years in a row, bringing sort of a cultural awareness to the classroom. And I was well received. This is a very, very welcoming town. I always felt comfortable here. I always felt that when I did have something to say, it was at least listened to, by the students, as well as the teachers I was working with. And when I came in today, I was standing outside and there's some young people holding signs. They're to be commended because they're speaking up for something they believe in. And I think that's what school is really all about. And it's that leadership, because without it, this country would never have changed and it will never continue to change and progress. So with that, I want to just say that I'm honored to be here. Thank you for inviting us to your meeting. Thank you for giving us an ear. In all the years that we've been talking to schools, school boards that we've been invited to, or even towns or even educational groups in certain towns, we have had, in my lifetime, such a significant advance in schools losing their imagery or giving up their imagery. And I want you to understand that we never made that change. No person sitting at this table, no tribal member sitting at this table, going back or years and years and years and years. We don't make any changes in any communities. You do. So we are here just to add a little bit to that voice, as many have said before me. And you're the only ones that can make the change. We can't make it. We've never made the change. I too was an Old Town Indian. I graduated Old Town High School in 1987. And I was separate from that because although the tribe is right next to Old Town and the high school is really only a mile or less from the tribal nation that I grew up on, even when I was in the school and athletes were doing their performances and people were going out representing the Old Town Indians, never once did I feel like I was ever a part of that. It seemed like I was always, put aside. There was quite a bit of rough road for me in middle and high school. And some of that was self-induced. 7th grade, repeating that a couple times, that was just because I liked 7th grade. And it didn't matter, really. In the end, it didn't matter. In the end, what mattered is how I picked myself up and how I conducted myself. And we never really, in this opportunity of change or opportunity to even have a voice, I've been reading the newspapers from this area and the comments. And what's really interesting about it is that there's really no voice of reason coming from either side, I should say. And in that, what I mean is that really, what can you do? You can keep it or you cannot keep it. There's no middle ground for that. And I just want to make sure that people understand that we're not here to change the town's imagery. We're not here to take the spearing fishermen off the wall at high school. We're not here to interfere with the town's pride and heritage at all. What we're here is a nickname that we find offensive. And because we find it offensive is only because of our experience and how we grew up. And I've heard many different arguments that the history of the town, the history of Old Town, is the history of the tribes. We had an invention 3,000 years ago that's never been improved on. It's called a canoe. That technology was instantaneous in some ways and unchanged other than the materials that build it. The history of Old Town is the history of the Penobscot Nation. That is our Old Town. That's where we did our trading. The school board made a decision to change that mascot. And I'm not that ancient. I'm 47. And I remember students going out at halftime to our football games to honor us. The cheerleaders would put on moccasins, take off their sneakers, and do a dance. I didn't feel honored. I don't feel honored when I see a high school football game where a mascot from another school is being desecrated, no matter what that mascot is. But just for a homecoming sort of rah-rah, you know. The example I can remember is going to a Winslow High School football game when I was in high school, and they were burning an effigy of a Indian with an Old Town football jersey on, hanging from a teepee that was burning in the field, made out of pallets. I didn't feel honored. I know that's not the extreme that we go through today, but we did go through it. And in 20 years, where will we be? I think the state of Maine eventually will be the first state in the entire country to have no Indian mascots in their high schools. And I say that in a very hopeful way, because we are all human, because we all have ideas and values. We all also have a connection. You're connected to the land here as we are connected to the land where we're from, in our certain parts of what we call now the state of Maine. And the desecration among the people and desecration to ceremonial objects, like in the Norwich Walk area with our petroglyphs. That's just progress. That's progress. In Skowhegan High School, from my research, is made up of 6 different towns. We don't want this to be any town issue. We want it to be a nickname issue in the mascot sense. Nobody in here is responsible personally for any atrocity that happened to Native Americans. Nobody in here personally has partaken in the massacre or the theft of land of Native people, in which local communities take pride in. But we sure all benefit from it. Everyone sitting here benefits from it. And why? Because that's just the way it is. We just can't forget that. So with that, I just want to say that I'm open for a discussion at any point in time. I'm open, and I can say that on behalf of Native American programs at the UMaine system, all 7 campuses, which I'm an administrator and work for, as well as teaching Wabanaki studies at the University of Maine now for 14 years. I can assure you that we have resources and we have people, including myself, that would be more than happy to come down and work with students in the classroom. My job, working with the Maine State Learning Results, doing the Learning Results revision back a few years ago, was hard fought and made it into the standards, made it into law. And we can assist teachers or community members with any knowledge that we have. And again, it's not forced, but it's available if you want it. And thank you so much again for having us here. I want to thank the youth for being here with your signs. That's That's our leadership. They're taking a stand, and that means something. So thank you.
My name is George Neptune. I'm Passamaquoddy from Indian Township. I grew up on the reservation until, well, I always lived there, but I was in school on the reservation until 8th grade. When I got to high school, my mother and I decided that I wanted a different opportunity than was available on the reservation. So I went to Gould Academy in Bethel, Maine. It was very much a culture shock for me to go to Gould Academy, having come from the reservation. Especially because all of a sudden, I went from being an Indian, and then I wasn't an Indian anymore. I was an Indian my whole life, and all of a sudden I got to high school and I was a Native American all of a sudden. And I was thinking to myself, well, I grew up in Indian Township, not Native American Township. But it seemed to continue after that. That's when people would start coming to me and say, oh, well, are you really an Indian? Because you don't really look like one. Well, I'm half Mexican, and I have brown skin. I look even more Indian than you. My cousin is Lakota. I have a cousin through marriage who is Lakota, and he is a real Indian, and you are not. He says there aren't any Indians west of the Mississippi. Then I went to college, and I went to Dartmouth College in Hanover, New Hampshire, which also used to have an Indian mascot, which they have since dropped. Many people do still try to keep it alive, but the official policy of the campus is that there is no mascot there, just Dartmouth, the big green. But it got even harder when I went to Dartmouth. I thought it was going to get easier for me because there was a Native community there. But that was the first time in my life that I went somewhere and I met other Native people, and they denied who I was. They said no. I found out months into my freshman year that most of my Native friends didn't believe that I was actually Native. I go out west to Santa Fe Indian Market. I speak my language, I make my baskets, I know our cultures and our traditions. But even out there, I'm still not an Indian, and it's because I don't look like this. One day I was at my mother's house, and my little brother was watching TV when he was about 4 or 5 years old. I forget exactly what was on the TV, but I think it was something along the lines of Disney's Peter Pan. And my little brother was watching TV, and he looked over at me and he said, Georgie, I wish I was an Indian. And so I explained to him, well, what do you think it is when we go to our ceremonies? He said, well, that's how we pray. Well, what do you think the language is that my grandmother speaks, our grandmother speaks? I said, well, she just speaks Passamaquoddy. I said, well, why do you think we speak it in school? And I had to explain to my little brother that he was an Indian. Now, to touch upon what Roger said, I actually do have a summary of the 2005 report from the American Psychological Association. It is the resolution recommending retirement of American Indian mascots. And I'd be happy to provide a link to this copy if anybody would like it. But the summary basically states that American Indian mascots undermine the educational experiences of members of all communities, not just indigenous communities. But it especially undermines the educational experience of those who have had little or no contact with indigenous peoples. It establishes an unwelcome and oftentimes hostile learning environment for American Indian students that affirms negative images and stereotypes that are promoted in the mainstream society. It undermines the ability of American Indian nations to portray accurate and respectful images of their culture, spirituality, and traditions. It presents stereotypical images of American Indians, and such mascots are a contemporary example of prejudice by the dominant culture against racial and ethnic minority groups. And it is a form of discrimination against American Indian nations that can lead to negative relations between groups. Now, obviously, the full report is much more than that. But these psychological effects are something that not only affect Native children, it affects other children as well. It's something that affected me. It's something that affects me every day. It affects all of us every single day. When my little brother said that to me, I made a promise to myself that I was going to do my best to fix that. And my little sister next in line is never going to feel that way. That my children will never feel that way, and my grandchildren will never feel that way. But I have to accept that they're going to. Because this type of imagery still exists, and it exists everywhere.
I'm Mullion Smith, Penobscot. I'm Penobscot from Indian Island. I grew up on the reservation. I went to high school in Bangor, went to college in Orono, and then I moved back to the reservation. I work there for our business corporation. I'm the human resources director. I own my home there, and I have 2 daughters and a stepdaughter there that I'm raising, and they go to school there as well. So that's just a little bit about me. I've been working, before I get into that, I need to say just how grateful I am to be here. I'm really excited for this opportunity, and I'm just really happy that not only the board but the town has welcomed us, even if it's in silent protest. We're here, and that's a huge step. I also want to thank everybody else on the panel. I think it's been a great, diverse look at this issue in the media and the different comment sections in the world of Facebook. I've seen a lot of insinuations that it's kind of a Barry Dana plight, and he's just being a rebel, and nobody supports him. And my cousin's Indian, he doesn't care. Who's this Dana guy? So it's so nice to have this very full representation from all the tribes. So I am Barry's daughter. My aha moment happened, as he mentioned, in his living room that day. We were watching a basketball game, and I saw the cheerleader come out in full some kind of buckskin getup, and she had war paint on her face and fake feathers on her head. And I said to my dad, I said, "What is that? I said, why are they doing that?" And he goes, "Well, they're the Skowhegan Indians and the Nokomis warriors, so that's what they do." And I go, "But that's not who we are." I said, I've been raised, I danced, and I was raised that, the clothing means something. You wear it for a ceremony, you wear it for a dance. You don't just slap it on and conduct a band and do flippy flips or whatever she was doing. You don't just put on that war paint because it looks cute and it upholds, whatever you're trying to do to win a basketball game. That's a serious, symbol of pride and respect, and it needs to be done the right way. Our ancestors fought very, very hard to protect these things so that we can continue them the right way. A sentiment I read today online was, well, if we get rid of Indian mascots, everyone's going to forget that you exist. And I said, well, we're going to have to take that chance. I said, because we don't need help keeping our traditions alive. We're doing it. You hear, George here, who's younger than me, speaking his language so beautifully. I mean, it survived, and we're here, and that's honorable to me. Seeing my culture taken and misrepresented is not an honor in any way. I do want to touch on the fact that there is no more imagery or nobody is doing that anymore, coming out at halftime with the dress and the getup and everything. And that is awesome. But as long as you have that word Indian, it creates a very fertile environment for racism and prejudice to grow. In some of I wrote a letter, actually an editorial that was published in the Morning Sentinel and Hennepin Journal, and the theme was, Indian is not a costume I can take off. Indian is not a costume that I wear. This is my life. I live with, our high rates of diseases, our high rates of alcoholism, our high rates of suicide, depression. We live with that every day. We can't go out and play Indian and be romantic and do a little dance, and then go home and go back to a privileged life. I mean, we live with our statistical odds that are less than other groups. And that's nobody's fault in this room, like John said, but that is the way it is. And it is disrespectful to think you can slap on being Indian and take it back off. In the comments of some of the things that I've written, one gentleman was nice enough to tell me if I don't live in a teepee, I have no say about this mascot. Another nice man said that if I don't canoe every day, I'm not a real Indian. My buddy, 8 feet of snow up there, no one's canoeing. And go bang your drum somewhere else. That was another good one. And and there's others I won't even mention, dignify with a response. But I can only think that if mascots didn't exist, if people couldn't say rah rah rah, I'm a Scaphegan Indian forever, I don't care what you say, rah rah rah. If it couldn't raise to that level, if wearing this Indian badge of pride, maybe there wouldn't be comments like that, or maybe the attitudes would change a little better if a race of people wasn't used as an object. I do want to. My husband was worried for me. He goes, "Well, there's going to be a silent protest." And I said, "Good, it's beautiful weather." I said, "Look at some air." I said, "It's good. It's good to feel passionate about things." From what I've gathered, Skowhegan has a lot of pride, in their heritage and their history as a town, and I think that is great. Nobody wants to take that away. We're not going to be up here chopping your statue down. Nobody's trying to do that. It's simply the concept of mascots are wrong. Indian mascots. That's the bottom line. And as long as we live in this world that accepts them, we're going to have incidences, like people have talked about with their kids. I had the same 2 moments with my children. My older daughter, we saw a Washington Redskins t-shirt or something, and she goes, "Mama," she goes, "is that what they think we look like?" She goes, "We don't look like that." She goes, "They're making fun of us." She goes, "That's not okay." And she's strong-willed enough and intelligent enough, she's 8 going on 28, but she can, realize where her identity fits into the scheme of things. And a lot of children can't, and that's problematic. That's what leads to identity issues. That's what leads, to so many, the depression, suicide, the alcohol. Mascots, people say, "Oh, get over it, find something else to worry about, you got bigger fish to fry." And the identity of our children is worth talking about and worth fighting over and worth bringing up. That's not a small thing. That's a big deal to me. My younger daughter, I had to line up childcare, and she says, "What are you doing?" She wants to know everything. And I said, I'm going over to this town. I said, and we're going to talk about the mascot of their school because it's an Indian. And she says, "Well, what's a mascot?" And I said, black bears, panthers, whatever. And she goes, "Oh, well, they're animals." She goes, "Indians aren't animals." 6 years old. So it's very basic principles here. You don't take a race of people and make them into objects, make them into animals, because then it makes it easy to knock them down, to treat them like an object and not treat them like human beings. I'm very happy to be here. Like I said, I'm really happy we never had a chance to talk. I'm always willing to talk about this with anybody, answer questions. I've had some back and forth with some community members already, some cousins, some not. But it's been a great process all around, I think. I think it's going very, very well, and I'm happy that we're here and we're talking. I think it's a great step in hopefully a very good direction. So thank you very much.
My name is Toma. I am the daughter of Gertrude and the granddaughter of Nancy. We're a maternal people. I don't feel very good sitting here. It takes me back to my childhood when I entered the non-Indian world. I was raised and brought up on a reservation. Can you imagine, any of you, being corralled on a piece of land and given welfare? Imagine it. Each and every one of you here think of yourself, imagine yourself being corralled on a piece of land with inadequate housing, inadequate food, no jobs. Imagine. Now imagine yourself there with your children. Children that we all love and care for. Your children, my children. That grow into adults, that we expect them to be responsible, hardworking adults, prideful people. Imagine. Imagine. And then we find out that we lay claim to the most of the land in the state of Maine. Imagine. I can't imagine sitting here in front of a group of people and asking for what? What are we asking for? Spirituality teaches us all to be connected to one another as human beings. As human beings. To be proud of where we come from. Why would anybody think to borrow anybody's culture? Why? We all are proud of our heritage. Every one of us in this room. We're all proud of our ancestors and what they've handed down to each one of us. The right to work, the right to live in dignity, the right to be proud. That's what we fight for here in the United States. That's why we go to war. Right? To give and enjoy the freedoms of the United States that we all enjoy, every one of us, to prosper, to grow, to care for one another in spirituality, in our connectedness as human beings first, to be culturally proud of who we are, the Irish, the Jewish, the indigenous people. Those are our inherent rights. Why are we here, I ask you? I really don't understand, and I'm an elder. I guess I can attribute that to my grandmother. I was raised and brought up on a reservation. My first language is Passamaquoddy. I left the reservation for survival. Surely, not all people in the United States lived the way I did. So I had to go out in the world and find out. I learned about racism. I graduated high school only because of my grandmother. My grandmother worked in a fish factory. She was picked up on a school bus and she was brought home in the dark of night in a school bus, smelling like a sardine. Her fingers were all bandaged because she worked hard in a sardine factory. And I said to her one night, I said, Mommy, of course I said it in Passamaquoddy, Gegmasini Gili Marcy, Bagsakiani by you. Why do you come here at night in the dark, all bandaged up, smelling like a sardine? She said, Neil named Lokewagan, that's my job. And your job, Gil Tagakin Ken, which is Scadio Julia Luke. Your job is to go to school so that you don't come in the night all bandaged up, smelling like a sardine. In spite of racism and being ill-prepared educationally because we were schooled in a 3-room schoolhouse, like many of the older generation here, perhaps, taught by nuns. We were taught by nuns because that was the cheapest way for the state to educate the heathen. We did a lot of coloring, a lot of Hail Marys, and I'm not making fun of religion. I'm sure there's Catholics here. I was brought up Catholic. But just imagine that kind of life. And what are we doing sitting here today in 2015 for this? It is beyond me. It is totally beyond me. I graduated high school in spite of the racism and all that you've heard on racism from my people here, who spoke so eloquently. I was sitting in the school bus. This girl kept pulling my hair in the back. She kept pulling my braid. I didn't know what to do. I was brought up very Christian. Love thy neighbor, give everything you have. Well, we did till we have nothing, and here we sit. If the settlement was done on the same level as our conquerors treated each other, we wouldn't be in the situation we're in. We would be land barons collecting tax money. Is that right? Is that how business is conducted in your world? Yes, it is. 100-square-acre reservation was where I grew up. You've got landowners in the state of Maine bigger than that. And I ask you, how did that come to be? That was not the way we conducted business, but that was certainly the way other people conducted business. Where is the Christianity? Where is the humanity? Where is the dignity our children are supposed to grow up with? They're all our precious investments, our children. One day, our children, as you hear here, will be teaching your children. They'll be teaching your children. And I hope and pray and trust that they will do a good job. And I hope and pray and trust that when they grow up in another generation or two, that they will not be sitting here talking about mascots of an indigenous people, of a proud people. I'm a proud person. My grandmother gave me that. She packed sardines and I learned your ways. And I worked. You know, my children worked. So, this is my first time sitting here in this kind of arena. And I hope to God it's my last. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate all the sharing. It's really been powerful, and I personally take to heart everything that has been said. I would like to open the floor, if that's okay, to other committee members if they would like to ask a question or share something, if that's okay.
I do know with the Psychology Association that you have reference to, that the National Education Association also agrees with that, and is very concerned with its effect on children in schools. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Just to reiterate on that, if I may, remember what the findings were not just Native children, but all children.
Yes, yes. Jen?
I just want to say, first of all, I just want to thank you all for coming and sharing all of your stories and your feelings. I think we all appreciate hearing your voice. I know the issue comes down to your asking or insinuating anyway that you would like to have the Indian name changed. From a perspective personally, I can understand where you're coming from on that, but I do, as a representative of Skowhegan, also feel that it's not just my decision to make, and even if it's not now, down the road, if anything were to come to an issue of we're going to change this or not, I do just want to say that I think the towns do come into play with that. I know somebody had mentioned that it shouldn't be a town issue, but our taxpayers are who we represent, and I do feel that if a change were to be voted on, that the people deserve a say in that also. And that comes into play, the education piece that we're talking about. It's not just a board of 23 people that needs to be talked to learn things. The whole community at large will need to understand any kind of change like that. So it could be a process, but it's definitely a learning situation for both sides. And thank you again.
I want to thank you again for coming and accepting our invitation. One of the questions that I had, I heard a lot spoken about respect and the spiritual connection of people. I wonder if if you could share with us opportunities that, well, before the meeting started, had the opportunity to talk to Mr. Mitchell and Mr. Paul about educational opportunities. And not just educating about what we're sharing here tonight as an issue, but how do communities that have genuine respect, how do they demonstrate that respect? And are there communities that you have had experience with that have done that well, that possibly could be a guide for Scout people moving forward?
Well, in regards to this particular issue, we have met with towns, and I mentioned them earlier, like Old Town, and the way they demonstrated that respect was by dropping their mascot and name. And there are plenty of other schools as well. So, Skowhegan remains the only school in the state. But as far as other issues, how does a town who recognizes their native history recognize, respecting that? I think the first step, and I'm scratching my brain here to come up with some memory of this having been done, but the first step would be to find out from us, what is it we could do, which is the question is, that would be to demonstrate that respect. You heard it said already that in this regards to this one issue, there is no middle ground. You either have to be called the Indians or not. So this would be a difficult one to come up with that third option. The Nokomis became, they were the warriors, and they still are the warriors, but we don't have a copyright on the word warrior. But they did invite us in to talk about their imagery, and just one 1-hour meeting took care of it. It was a very simple change. So there was an experience when the town invited us in. So what can we do? A wholly different issue. It's the town of Warren, who was joined in a lawsuit against our tribe for ownership of the river, and they took it upon themselves. I'm hoping tonight they take it upon themselves to follow through. They're going to disjoin themselves from the lawsuit. They do not feel 3 miles away that they're our neighbors. So whether or not they formally asked us for permission to them to not sue us, I don't know. However, they took it upon themselves not to sue us. They recognize that the Penobscot Nation is an inherent tribe of the Penobscot River, and who else could ever even begin to claim ownership of the Penobscot River? Well, the state is, but you can't be what you are not. You cannot gain something by simply saying. And so this will be fought out in the court of law. So I'm scratching my brain here. Help me out with ways in which towns who recognize Native history, and that's a key word here, is history. Heritage is what I passed down to my daughter. Heritage is what my grandmother has passed down to me, and her great-grandmother before her. Heritage in this area was in 1723, a massacre of my ancestors. The survivors, one in which carried a young boy on her back across the river while bullets were flying, and made her way across. If you look at the state of Maine, it's mapped. It's Route 43. That's an old native trail. We call it the Noligible Trail. It goes right to Penobscot. And when she went there and raised that boy, it became one of my ancestors. What has Norwalk done to recognize us for having been the original people of the Kennebec, the Abenaki? I don't know. Can't come to mind. So I think it's a great question, and I think these type of opportunities have been missed. It's only in conflict that we come together and try to resolve it. The state of Maine has been so deficient on creating opportunities outside of conflict where we can come together. There was a law passed, an LD if that's an actual law, to make sure that schools taught Native education. It was a law without teeth. It was not funded. However, many schools, and I think John Bear has highlighted how Scott Egan took that serious and brought him in for residency. And many schools do that, but many other schools don't know how to do it. So they just sort of sit idle and they maybe show a movie, call it good. At best, they would have a speaker, a Native speaker, and present, what is Native culture, what is Native history, what are our Native views of today. Obviously, like Molly said, we're not living in wigwams. Although house in our language means, wigwam does mean house. So we sort of do live in wigwams, and as you all do, I'm sure. So it's a great question, and it's one that I think can move us in the future. How do towns honor and respect? But it has to be from a two-way street. Well, could we show how we honor you by using you as a mascot? I can guarantee you the answer is no. Can we honor you by saying that, we have copies of the treaties where we signed with you and then we kind of broke it? Could we maybe go back and visit that? Such as places like that was mentioned, that the petroglyphs could be returned to their rightful owners. But that we have a concept of ownership, but you know what I mean. Whose name is on the deed? It's not ours, but it's our ancestral homeland. So if you ask me, what can the state of Maine, what can towns do to really honor Native people? I got some pretty good answers for that, but they don't just rest with the nickname change. It rests with land. And there are areas, the Passamaquoddies were gifted. They're petroglyphs, the sacred sites. It was bought by a nature conservancy group, and at the same time they signed the deed, they gave it to the tribe, the tribe signed it, and bang, that's honor, that's respect. So there are ways that we can do it, but it takes this communication to do so.
Anyone else?
Richard Solboy. Excuse me. Well, mine's real short. I just want to say that the human being is not capable of understanding what it don't feel. So we can teach you as much as we can, but unless you totally understand where we come from and who we are, you'll never have that feeling.
question, piggyback on what Tim said, I think, was how can we continue to work together? But I really appreciate you coming here. I really appreciate everything that you have said. It seems to me that the conversation could go on. Do you have any idea of how we could do that?
One very simple, easy way to do that is to just keep lines of communication open. The University of Maine, the museums, the Abbey Museum. We all know all of the Native educators in Maine. We all know of educators who will come to you, and people that are willing to come and share our stories, share our perspective of history. I can come and teach your kids Passamaquoddy in the classroom. There are many different ways that we can collaborate to teach our culture and to teach what is respectful for us. And I do think that it is, it's obviously important to acknowledge the Native history of this place, but that history from our perspective is very, very different from your perspective. It wasn't this friendly relation where all of a sudden we just didn't come back. There were proclamations from the King of England ordering us extinct. That's why we left this area, because the Abenaki were ordered exterminated. And those ancestors had to come to the more northern communities, come to Banwapske, come to Maratnuguk in order to survive. And then they had to hide who they were, because they came looking in our communities for the Abenaki that fled from this area. So we are the people that were here. And we remember that history, and we still experience it every single day. And this may not be hard to hear, or this may not be easy to hear, but just as John said, no one person was responsible for that kind of destruction. Not anyone here, but everyone does benefit from it. And we still experience it. It's still very much a part of our lives. And whether you want to be or not, you are our colonizers. You are. So this kind of imagery, even if it's coming from a place of honor, it doesn't harm us.
And I'll speak to that a little bit too, about going forward, I guess. I think it would be beneficial, now that we've made this initial contact, we've broken the ice and gotten everybody together. I think maybe a public forum with the town would be beneficial, even if there's conflict and hurt feelings. And, I view that as opportunities. Maybe it's my day job's human resources, so I have to, be all cuddly and cozy, get people to agree and all this stuff. So I'm not afraid of protests. I'm not afraid of people disagreeing with me. I welcome it, actually. I can't speak for everybody, but I would come back and field questions from community members, other school board members, students. I think a lot of this is going to rest with the students, the kids that are living this every day. I know a lot of them have a lot of passion for the subject, which is great. And I think it would benefit all sides to have it more of an open forum. I was hoping it would be kind of question and answer type thing tonight, but I'm glad it wasn't, because I think, everybody having the floor to say their piece was perfect. And now moving forward, everybody knows where we stand, and maybe, we can mix it up a little bit, get, discussions happening, and then move forward. I for one would be involved with that.
There are so many opportunities for this area that would make me feel honored. The names of this whole area is just from our history. I mean, the river Inpe, the name Spohegan, Newajor, all of those words. Ginbeg actually in our language means big river. And it goes all the way up to the Chateauguay and goes near the St. Lawrence, where our place we call Getbeg. Getbeg is where the water ends. And when the French settled that, they took that area and called it Getbeg, or Quebec today, and named the province after that. That's Quebec City. A lot of the history of our people is ingrained into our language, which is all over this area, which honors me personally to know that you all speak my language and you honor that. Being a mascot is not one of them, though. But there are so many other things, and as Barry mentioned, a lot of the stereotypical Indian word names come from the tribes right here, the Wabanaki, like our word for Mokson, our word for wigwam. our word for Winneagan, and our word for Woodalbaugin. All of those words that are stereotypical Indian words in the English language come from the tribes right here, the Wabanaki. There is so much that could be taught here, and there's so much in the naming of everything here. And everybody here has lived the Maine traditionally outdoor life, which has been traditionally ours. There is so much here that we can connect with. It's just that the mascot issue is not one of them. But there's an opportunity, and I'm sure we would all come back and be willing to share. There is nothing I like better than sharing my culture with other people. And it's that education that this may not be the greatest place, and as an educator, it hurts me to say it, but our education system has failed to teach about our Indigenous peoples here. And we're here to change that, and we want to change that. So there's many things that we can connect on. And please keep using the place names. That's our language. Lily.
Love it, Bishop. Yeah. She said something earlier. She said, "Get over it." And that, like, I don't know how many times I ever heard "get over it," and it made me think about those words. What, like, just the other day, and I just really started thinking about it. Like, well, why would they say "get over it"? And I discussed it with this with Richard on the way down, my elder, and I was telling Richard that, I'm going to get a little real. Like, when you tell us to say, like, oh, you guys, your land, we're honoring you and all this, and also like that, hey, you guys are living, let's just get over it. Like, you guys have been crying about it all the time. Well, when there's a wrong that's been done, and in the history books, the way it was overtaken, we saw an apocalypse. Our people were survivors of an apocalypse. And we saw the end of times. Our people see the end of a way of life. Before you think about here on Turtle Island, how many Native people that were here, probably wasn't even documented. However, nowadays it's starting to come out more and more, like coming up, the travesties that are going on. When you do harm, the psychological effects that it has, and you guys have been talking about this, what you brought out about this document that you guys had. That still resonates with our people here today. The psychological effect still affects us today. So I'm going to put it in terms so that you may understand where we're coming from, and that we really can't get over it. It's like you telling a rape victim or a person that was molested, hey, you're still crying about it, get over it, it's a long time ago. It does not work that way. By show of hands here, who all lives in a home? I live in a home. Okay? So all of a sudden you guys invite me into your home. It's all good, we're having fun. We're partly okay, eating, we're sharing food, we're all like, but then I call up, hey Roger, come on over. And, Matt, bring Matt with you. So then all of a sudden, Matt and I, Roger, we're all sitting here, we're all in your house with you, and all of a sudden, we start going on the line, we start calling more friends, and all of a sudden, this is your home. You have to imagine your home, in your house, your home, place where you sleep, where you eat, where you shower, where you do everything with your family. All of a sudden, my friends start showing up, and next thing you know, your family just went from 6 to 9. All of a sudden, a few more come, 15. The next thing you know, we're doubled. Your family just doubled. And then all of a sudden, it's tripled. All of a sudden, we're like, hey, you called the cops. Now you gotta imagine in this scenario, you call the cops, and the cops show up, and they look like this. Knock on the door, hey, can you get these guys out of our house? Well, I can't. Well, let me talk to them. Let's see what's going on. Hey guys, gotta settle down. The homeowner's getting mad. He's like, I really can't ask you to leave, but just settle down. So okay. The next step is you continue. But then we tell you, okay, we're taking over this place. Now I want you to take all your stuff here in your home, and I want you to put you in the back room. And in the back room, that's where everything's gonna stay. It means like all your TVs, your electronics, your computer, your fridge, whatever you own, it's gotta go in that back room with you. All of a sudden you're like, hey, whoa, this can't happen. This cannot happen. What are you doing? Well, all of a sudden you get a lawyer involved, and all of a sudden that lawyer looks like us. Do you think he's going to listen to your side? Will he be sympathetic and say, yes, we're according to law, yes, we can do this? You go in front of a judge, and all of a sudden the judge looks like this. And all of a sudden, how do you think you're going to feel? Wow, how am I going to relay this to get this across? How is this going to happen? They took over my home, and you're being sympathetic, and all of a sudden the judge, well, we got them here. Well, they claim it's their home. Well, it's my home to begin with. And, well, they're here now. There's not much I can really do about it. So you go back home, and all of a sudden you lose. Your electronics are gone, and all of a sudden that's like the equivalent to our language. Like, the losing a part of pieces of what you own. With the language, because the culture's starting to go away, and all of a sudden you're left. By the end of it, you're sitting there and you got your clothes. You're in the back room, while the rest of us, we all have the enjoys of the thing. And all of a sudden, one of us will pop up and we say, hey, come on out and join us. Come on out and join us. It's okay now. Come on out and join us. When you come on back out, but you want to honor you. You want to honor you. You gave up your home. It's bad. We feel that, it's only fair. We honor you. So then we put up a figurine. Let's just say, just use Statue of Liberty. What's it supposed to stand for? And all of a sudden it's like, we're honoring you. We put the Statue of Liberty up there, and all of a sudden we're looking at it, and all of a sudden you're like, well, what does that mean? But we're honoring you. You know what your country stood for liberties. You got to understand what liberties are. Liberties are not so much freedom, but permissions to do stuff. And that's what we live in. That's our world. That's the reality. That's the history. All in that one little condensed little thing. I talk about all that stuff that happens to our people that in history has that effect. We call it post-apocalyptic stress syndrome. And it's embedded into like the person's psyche. It goes into their DNA. It's like something that what our ancestors have done. It's with the same blood that goes through them, and it still flows through us. Through each generation, of each cycle of life. But when you're from birth to full completion of the circle to going on to the spirit world. Those things go along with you. And that's all a part of that oral history. So hopefully that you understand where, being stuck to the back room into a small area where you lose everything, and you only can hang on to what you have a little bit. But yet all of a sudden you have the people that took over your home say, but we're honoring you. And then to say, get over it. That's reality. Sorry to get a little real, but that's how it is. Now, I try to put it into a context that you would understand, put it in a way that you can relate to it. And that's part of that cultural teaching that to physically bring you into it, to show you that this is the world, this is the way it is.
And just quickly, I keep hearing, I heard again that this is a Skowhegan issue. And I just want to keep it to your attention that I'm looking at the placards in front of you, and I see various towns. I do not believe, and nobody can convince me, that this is a Skowhegan town issue. this is an SAD or an MSAD 54 issue. And if, you know, and if it's a town issue, then I would tend to want to say, why is it a town issue in itself and not a Mercer, Norwich Walk, Smithfield, and other towns that send students here, because there's no other place for the students to go. Is that correct? As students, they come here? It's a six-town issue. We are not asking or making any mention of taking away any town symbolism, or even the picture on the wall at the high school of the native person spearing the fish. This is a nickname issue. It's a six-town issue, from what I'm seeing, from what I can see. And obviously the school is in Scouting, I know that. But working together, going back to Tim, Mr. Downing, working together is what I think we're really good at. The tribes of Maine, we're only tribes of Maine because borders crossed and split us. We're also tribes of Quebec, tribes of New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, PEI, Newfoundland. And we've worked together. We have a confederation. We're the most easterly confederation of tribes in the United States. We're called the Wabanaki. Because our W is, in our language, is not well pronounced, folks who heard us speak heard Abenaki, because our Wabanaki, our soft W, was not picked up by the ears of the French or the English or the Portuguese or whoever it was that decided to write it down as Abenaki. But Abenaki is a tribe. There are two tribes. There are direct descendants in New Hampshire and Vermont, but Wabanaki is a tribe in Canada. There are two villages. And only left this area because of war and this humongous copy of what we would call ancient text messaging or Facebooking. And that is when you write something, it's out there. And what's out there is, from this area, are massacres. It's not friendly. My family was there. My family was in Norwich Walk when one of the many massacres happened, one of the well-documented massacres. Probably the most acknowledged massacre in the state of Maine was right next door. Well, most documented. Because it was a war against the French and the English. And they brought us in, and they used us for those kinds of things. We had no choice. Our people lived 100 years of other people's wars straight without a break in this area, in other areas as well, wherever people were, which is always along the river. So, in that history, the real history, we have a traumatic experience in this area. It's not, as I see in the postings, in certain people's opinions, which they are, the history is not being told. And it horrifies, I think, some people to sit here and think, well, should this history be told to our children? No, absolutely not. We should not talk about the killing that took place here, that our ancestors did, that we benefit from. Instead, let's just talk about the Holocaust in Europe. Instead, let's talk about dropping an atomic bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Because it's easier to talk about things that happen away, and it's safer for our children. And we're more comfortable with it as adults because that's what we learned. So this kind of education, this kind of sharing can happen all the way from when I was on the Maine Learning Results Revision Committee. The only thing at the time that was in the learning results was in art. The only standard said, teach a Wabanaki dance. And you've completed the state requirements for teaching about Wabanaki people. And when LD 291 in 2001 was passed, and I was appointed by my tribe at the time, Chief Barry Dana, sitting over here, was appointed myself and Rebecca Sockbeeson, who's now a professor out in somewhere in Canada. Her family can speak better to that than I can, but we were honored to represent our community in that law and getting it to get some teeth because it was unaccountable. So I sat on the Learning Revision Committee for 2 years with, at the time, Commissioner Sujembra. And I cut up into little pieces confetti that, this is hypothetical, and Maine Indians, and Maine Indians, and Maine Indians. And I took it and I just threw it in the sky. And I let it all land. And I threw 100 of them up there. And I said, if one sticks, hopefully it sticks in a subject area that kids are going to be tested in standardized tests in the state of Maine. And it landed in 23 different spots in there right now. You can open the Maine Learning results online, you can read them, and it's in 23 different areas. But the scary thing is, well, how do we teach about Native Americans? We're not Native. There are a lot of people that have ancestry, but that ancestry doesn't afford anybody the opportunity to have experienced what it's like growing up on a reservation and having to be bullied in a local town, or to not grow up on a reservation and be stripped of your identification because you didn't grow up on a reservation, or to sit in a school, middle school or high school, and all of a sudden they start talking about American Indian casinos or school mascots, and they look right at you, the teacher, and says, well, what do you think about that? No student should be put in that spot, but it happens. And we are the students. But we are also the teachers now. And the teachers are storytellers. We didn't have what we called teachers before we had books, internet, before we had radio, before we had any kind of media. We had storytellers who would teach us. They would tell the stories. And it was for up to us as individuals to hear the lessons, to hear the morals, the values, the history. And we're more than happy to share that, like I said. The Wabanaki Center at the University of Maine, we put together Wabanaki Studies 101. Like I said, when I was teaching at the Indian Island School, and I got my master's in ed leadership in 1999 as a principal certification, I said that, you know, when I was starting to think about different towns, first of all, you have to localize your own history. It can't be you teaching about Old Town in Skowhegan. You have enough history here. People claim they know it, but I haven't heard it yet. I've heard myths. I've heard loose stories, but I would really like to hear the history. I'd like to hear your history. I would. I'd like your children to know their history. They are all the future right there. Those ones that are standing here tonight with the signs, they're the strong ones. And they have a little bit of time too. So, you know, I encourage you to invite us into your schools, to invite us into your community. We're more than just bear meat and berries. And we're more than just songs. And we're more than just stories. We are people who have been educated in the same schools under the same common core of learning that you guys have been through. So we know it. We don't not know it, we know it. And we know it enough to be able to say, let's do this. Invite us in. Let's have meaningful conversation, not debates. Let's have a conversation. It's very obvious where a lot of people who post negative comments on the newspapers, in the feedback. I use it in my classrooms. At the University of Maine, I have over 100 students. Probably about 8 of them are native. The rest are not native. There could be any ethnicity. But they read those comments after the article. They monitor them as part of a project that they do. The Facebook comments, the newspaper comments, the TV comments on the TV websites. And those who are brave, those who really feel they know what they're talking about, actually put their real name up there. And it's easier to have a conversation with somebody who has a name than it is to have a nickname. And again, I really want to thank you guys for letting me be here.
I also want to thank you for coming and sharing with us. I think it's been a very important evening. I'm very pleased that we actually have TV people here, and I know we'll see a small portion on most of the channels. But Channel 11 is here from Madison, Maine, and bless their hearts, they'll play this 500 times. So for all of you in the audience, if your spouse or your children haven't seen this and listen to this wonderful panel, tell them to turn on Channel 11. And I also know in the past, Mary Dana, you've come to the Canaan School and the powwow with Steve Swindell and all of his kids out there. And they made dream catchers and things. And it's wonderful to hear how open you are about coming in and sharing with our kids. We need more of that in our schools. We really do. And I know there was an Indigenous Peoples Day shortly after the Bernard Langley statue was celebrated downtown. And I don't think there was that big a turnout, but I bet next year if you do that, there'll be a lot of us willing to come and turn out for your festivities. And thank you so much.
I have something to say. About whether this is a district versus towns versus school board issue. I truly believe this is a district as in the school board issue. My mom served on the school board for many years, so I know a little bit about that. And I have gone from being a Solon Bobcat to a Caravet Cobra to a Maine Black Bear and to being a Farmington Beaver. And let me tell you, it doesn't matter what school I'm at, it doesn't matter what mascot I'm representing, I have school spirit because I love my school, I love my community. The fact that you might want to change from Indian to nothing or to an animal, that's not going to change their spirit because they have a lot of it. And wouldn't it be cool if you just went ahead and did it? Say, you know what, there's a lot of negative responses. There's a lot of racist responses. Do you want that to be what represents Skowhegan if it came to a vote and that's how it went? Think about that. If this went to a vote and these towns said, no, we're good, we want to stay with Indian, think of what kind of a message that would send to other communities, to Native people here. Would I want to stay in this area knowing that? Now that my face has been up here, are people going to approach me? These are serious things I have to consider when living here. Things I need to consider when I think about having children one day, or teaching in this area because that's what I want to do. And if Skowhegan gets rid of the Indian nickname, this is a place I would consider teaching because it's in my area, a place that I love. But I don't think that's something I could ever consider if I knew that this area voted to keep that against what we wish, because we are the people that are offended. It's something to say, hey, can you stop using that? If someone was calling you Four Eyes, if someone was calling you a nerd, and you said, hey, can you please stop? Oh, get over it, I'm just joking. Oh, gee, thanks, it makes me feel a lot better. No, it's not. So just don't hide behind behind the community. Take that step and say, no, we do not stand for this. You people are elected officials. By your community electing you, they have already said, hey, we trust your opinion. We trust you to represent us, just like when we vote for politicians. Even if the people we don't like get into office, we still want them to represent us. And then we get really ticked off when they don't. But you know what? A few years down the road, who freaking cares? No one. And you know what? It's not gonna matter. You're gonna be whatever you are. You're still gonna have that spirit. You're still gonna have an awesome field hockey team. You're still gonna have I watch these things. You're still gonna have a good football team and maybe win some more state championships. The fact that you're not called Indians will not change that. You'll still have that drive because I know this area very well.
I just need to piggyback that a little bit. I completely understand where you're coming from, but as an elected member, I'm elected to speak with the majority of my voters in Skowhegan Field. They're the voters that pay the tax bills and pay for our schools, and I think that they deserve to be heard as well. And that's why I think what was said as far as community forum, to have the interaction with the community is a positive step as well. You can't just think it's going to be up to 23 people, just change it. When you have a very broad base of the community that right now is in a position really that they are ready to take that step. So to have that community interaction, I think would be helpful on both sides. But I don't think it's fair either to ask 23 people who were voted into office to represent all of these other people out there to make that decision. I can't speak solely for myself. I have to speak for the people that elected me, is all I'm saying. So hopefully, maybe further discussions can broaden and talk to that.
Thank you. Is anyone else interested in?
Yes. Yes. I just want to thank you all as chair and as a citizen of the town for taking the time to come out and share your thoughts with us. You've given us a lot to think about. I think it's been a good education piece for our board and some of our community. And just want to say that we really appreciate that.
Did you want to? At this point, what we do with a subcommittee like this is we go to a full school board meeting with what's happened at this meeting. We'll be discussing as a full board. And then we'll decide at that point what we're going to do. Whether we move forward with more discussions or we decide to make a decision will be decided as a full board. So, but we appreciate the fact that you've come here today. It's amazing that we've been able to have this open communication with you.